here today to celebrate the Delphic movement and its debut in our Northeast region. I request our advisor, Northeast India, and founding member of the Indian Delphic Council, Ms. Jahnavi Fukan, to give her welcome address.
Good evening, friends. Thank you all for being here today. Mr. Ramesh, Prasanna is here with us, and we are gathered here just to celebrate his arrival and the beginning of our 27th Founders' Day for Delphic Council. So it was exactly 2 months ago, on 15th October, when I got a call from Mr. Ramesh Prasanna. He spoke about the Delphic movement and all that it stood for. I hadn't heard about this movement till then, but I was fascinated by the very thought of it, as Mr. Prasanna explained its significance. In my enthusiasm, I volunteered to help form the Delphic Council, not only for Assam, but for all our Northeast states. I am neither an artist, nor am I a bureaucrat in the culture ministry, but I didn't want to lose the opportunity to showcase our Northeast region to the Delphic world. Additionally, India was to host the 27th Foundation Day this very year. So I jumped into that as well. And we asked for our region to be part of the celebrations. Otherwise, there was no way we could wait till the next 4 years came around for the Delphic Games. So, and it's even more significant today that in this informal meet that we have arranged, that Mr. Prasanna, when I knew him, he was the advisor to the SAARC countries for the Delphic. Today, he comes as the Secretary General of the International Delphic Council. So congratulations, Mr. Prasanna, and we are so delighted and grateful for your presence here today. And this is on behalf of the entire Northeast Council. Thank you and congratulations. And we're talking about the Delphic Games. Did any of us know that the first gold in these games was won by India, and better still by Assam? Our Ministry of Culture has been sending artists to participate in the Delphic Games since 2009, and it was at Jeju, South Korea, that Assam, India, stood out among the 54 participating countries. The old Samrat, Somnath Bora, he brought the gold home. He also brought home the silver medal, that too for the first time. Adhol Samrat is here with us today, and we can't wait to see his performance tonight. I had heard about him from Mr. Prasanna, so I could call Mr. Somnath Bora. But it was interesting about Dr. Prasanna Gogoi, who I knew as a great choreographer who had put our Northeast Games together some years ago. When I called him and spoke about the Delphic movement, he said that he knew about it. He had in fact participated in it, and he had brought the bronze for India. So that's congratulations to Dr. Gogoi as well. And he's also here with us. So today I'm indebted to all my friends out here, too many to name, who've come together in this motley group that we have formed in the arts and culture fraternity, and they helped me to reach out to each of our states and ask for a Northeast Council to be made. It is really a small endeavor, and I know each one of yours participation and contribution will matter to take this forward. It took a lot of time and patience to speak to many people across all the states. Some declined, some stating time constraints, some were doubtful about the very mission, and some most happily agreed. And it was Ramesh Prasanna who took his time and effort to speak to each of them individually after I'd done the initial round. And he, along with a very able colleague, Rachna Puri, who couldn't be with us today, that together we have now got some 26 members of our Delphic Council from the Northeast, all the 8 states of the Northeast. And I know with this first group of people, we will go on to many more. And I'm sure all of you will help, because this platform is not about committees and who's going to be the president, who's heading what. It's about the love and the pride we take in our own states and what the best we can bring forward. So for the benefit of our Delphic friends worldwide, I would like to mention here, as Mr. Ramesh Prasanna has asked me to give you briefly about what we represent, or the Northeast, when we talk about the Northeast region, what it represents. For all our Delphic friends worldwide who are watching this, is Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Tripura, and Sikkim. These are the 8 states that comprise our region. This has a special importance in India, not only for their location, but for their cultural and historic uniqueness and diversities. The landscape, the range of communities, the geographical and ecological diversities, that makes all our states so different from the rest of the country. And that is why we are known as the 8 siblings, the 7 sisters and the 1 brother. And as we know that our Northeast states, we cover 8% of our country's total geographical region, and we house 4% of our country's population. So with this great diversities, there's still a very unique unity of purpose behind us getting together here. And with our region, which I wanted to inform Ramesh when he was asking me this, we house over 200 of the 635 tribal groups in the country, speaking a variety of Tibeto, Burman languages and dialects. So from the staggering array that we have just brought today a small smattering of our culture for the states of Assam and the state of Manipur. We all know the talent that we have in this region. We are all from here, but for Ramesh, who understands, and for Mr. Agarwal also, who's here with us today, I do think that it's all our responsibility of each one of us to bring the hidden gems that we have in our country to the forefront and to the global stage. So what could be a better way than the Delphic way? So with that, I would like to ask Mr. Ramesh Prasanna, Secretary General of the International Delphic Council, to be with us today. And I would like to just tell you briefly about what Ramesh Prasanna stands for, and let me read this out. He is now just reappointed the Secretary General. He is going to oversee the affairs of the International Delphic Movement, and he has held various positions in the Delphic Movement over the years. When I had met him, he was the advisor for the SAARC countries, and now he takes over as overall charge. And he's, besides Delphic, which is very much part of his life, he's a cultural entrepreneur. He's based in Hyderabad. He has interest in creating cultural spaces, ecosystems, arts, pedagogy, and intellectual properties. So that is Mr. Prasanna for you, and may we have you take over and tell everyone about what Delphic Movement stands for.
Thank you very much. The music piece that you just heard has been composed by Gunther Krause. He's a German music composer and a founder member of the International Delphic Council way back in 1994. We play it still as a fan music, as we call it, because we feel that it actually creates the kind of feeling in you when you are in a large hall with so many people, and it actually gives you the goosebumps to start with. I mean, this is what arts does to you. Well, good evening to all of you. I would first start with thanking Jahnavi Phukanji. She has been, a very rare kind of a person, because we interact with a lot of people in the world, and we are running a lot of councils around the world in different countries and different states as well. And one of the things that I've noticed about people is there are 2 kinds of people. One who likes to be led, one who likes to lead. And there is a third kind of a person who's absolutely does not require any initiative, self-initiated, and has the zeal to, kind of do anything and everything. I mean, these are master, what we call that, leaders, as we call it. I think Jahnavi ji actually fits into that description very well for me. And I'm sure most of you agree with that. Apart from what she's done in her professional life, and apart from what she represents in terms of, the social work she does, what I also think is that, other than being artists in the world, you also need people to manage arts. You need people to run the ecosystem, because artists are wonderful beings who are very creative in their own beautiful world, cannot be structured. Artists are basically, they lack structure. They lack the sense of, what you call that, wanting to hold something, because it's momentary, it's fleeting, and they're very deeply, kind of connected with themselves, and therefore they would not like to do the same thing again, but whereas administrators and people can do that better. Now, just to take you back into a bit of a history before we, so that you understand where we come from. 2,500 years ago, we had, we still have a village in Greece called Delphi. And many of you who have actually gone through history would have also heard about something called the Oracle of Delphi. The Oracle of Delphi was basically a lady who was also called the Pythia. And a Pythia would mean a high priestess, who possibly had the powers of foretelling. She could see the future and tell you about the future and tell you what to do, what not to do. And the Pythia was an institution, not one lady. These women changed over 1,000 years. And that institution was so powerful and so influential that everybody from Aristotle to Socrates to Alexander the Great, over a period of 10 centuries, have gone to the Pythia, have taken advice, and they have proffered their own advice to the world, and they have also done things which today are in history. The influence of the Pythia was so powerful that in those days, whatever the world they thought was the world, because the world, as we know today, is we are a large planet, and there are many countries in the world, But in those days, possibly the world would have been between the Middle East and possibly, the end of Europe on this side, on the eastern side. And therefore, in that world, they used to be extremely influential. And the influence spread out so much that everybody wanted to come and see Pythia. And Pythia used to be very wise. So when 12 tribes, I would give you a very good example of how do we make an analogy here. Like in India, it's nothing to do with religion or whatever. It's to do with, what you call that, a symbolic figure. We have got a Saraswati, who is considered to be the goddess of Kala, of art, of education, of everything that's creative, that comes from within you. And in Greece, as we heard of Greek gods, a lot of people talk about handsome Greek gods, So one of the Greek gods was God Apollo, who was the epitome of art, culture, everything to do with creativity and artistic abilities. Now, the temple, or we call it temple, you can call it, wherever the god used to, possibly sit and reside, was a place where 12 tribes wanted to take control of that. Everybody wanted to, run it, because it was such an important place to be in. They used to fight with each other, and fights were physical fights, that we want to run this, we want to take care of this. Pythia called all of them, made them sit together, made them understand the power of unity, made them understand the power of a coalition. How can you coexist? How can you co-learn? How can you create things instead of fighting? So therefore they decided that they will form a coalition of 12 people, 12 tribal heads, or a league of neighbors, because they were neighbors around that place. How can they together run the temple of God Apollo? By rotating themselves every year, and therefore then so on and so forth. Now I must tell you that we hear the word coalition in not so good terms these days. But coalition, the most successful coalition in the world was it was called the Amphitryon, which is what we call our International Executive Board today, and I represent that. And the UNO that we know of, the United Nations, also is a forerunner. This was a forerunner to the UNO. So UNO is formed on the same lines of the Amphitryon. It's a League of Nations. We had League of Neighbors. And therefore, this was a proof of concept of how peace can be gathered by way of people getting together. There's no bigger proof than that. To honor Pythia, the League of Neighbors, or the Amphitryon, decided that they wanted to create something called the Pythian Games. Pythia was her name. Because it was in Delphi, it was also called the Delphic Games. And therefore, they created a games where, if you go back into our history also, we were never things were in silos. Every artist would know that. To be a good artist, you need to be an all-rounder. You need to be able to you need to have the physical stamina as well. So physical prowess, artistic abilities, and the education to go with it, or the culture to go with it. So all these three things, there was a platform called Pythian Games. And therefore this Pythian Games ran for 1,000 years, or the Delphic Games as you would call it, 1,000 years. And these 1,000 years were so successful, they did not need a religion. They did not need to fight. They were living very harmoniously, because artists, when they meet, any artist here would tell you that they can create something together. So when Somnath Boraji would possibly, perform, and then he does Jugalbandis and all of that, even if he performs, there's a cultural context to his performance. It is not in silos that he's performing. There is a certain science to what he does. There is a certain art to what he does. So it's transdisciplinary. They say that to be a musician, you need to know poetry. And to be also an architect, you need to understand dance. Now, a lot of people may wonder why. But if you go deeper into the deeper sense of the whole thing, you'll understand why. And then, obviously, to understand literature, you need to also understand the social norms of that particular place that you live in. So everything is transdisciplinary, and therefore, the Delphic Games were so successful that a lot of people started getting envious of it, because many of the other rulers who wanted to possibly, come and take over this place, because in the olden times it was more a barbaric society. You had to pull things out, you have to go and fight, you have to grab. That's what the olden societies used to do. And when they could not, and then we called it the pagan society. Pagan society is above religion. They believed in humanity as a religion. That was the primary sense. And therefore, when some emperor came and he wanted to change that to a religion, he could not, because he saw the harmony was too much for him to bear. He banned those games by force. For many, many years, the games did not happen, but people don't stop. People love what they do. They continued with what they did. The sporting component of that games, Pythian Games, went to Olympia, which is called the Olympic Games today. And the artistic component is what we know as the Delphic Games today. And therefore, many years later, 1600 years later, when the world was again going through a metamorphosis, when the kingdoms were dissipating, and when, democracies were coming out, when, the federal structures were being built, there was a necessity again for you to have some sort of a diplomatic tool. How do you then reach out? How do you compete with each other? How do you talk to each other? So they felt that this particular, activity, which was the sporting activity, would be the best, because sports diplomacy even today works. It's very competitive diplomacy, because you are the best, he's the best, he's number 1, 2 and 3. So then naturally, when there's competition, everybody wants to put out their best, and therefore, people galvanize and they come together. However, over a period of time, even Olympics realized that without the arts, the games means nothing. So in 1912 to 1948, many of us don't know about this, Olympics had singing, they had poetry, they had painting, they had all of these art forms within the Olympic Games. But because of the world wars and the way the world shaped up and a lot of things changed, artists are very sensitive to their ecosystems, artists are very sensitive to the harmony around them. Naturally, people started looking for livelihoods. They lost the patronage of the royal families. Most of the patronage was done by kingdoms. If I was yesterday in Jaipur and I saw this very beautiful Amer fort, the kind of work that has been done must have taken thousands of artists and artisans over 100, maybe tens of years to finish that. So therefore there was livelihood. So therefore there was a need to develop skills. Therefore the need to even think scientifically when it came to art as to how things could be done. And this is why, heritage today is so very important. Even today what do we have in terms of a lot of tourism is also heritage. And heritage basically is all patronage of the royal maybe kingdoms and other people who had that taste for it. Therefore, when federalistic structures came in, what became important? Business became important, industrialization became important, globalization became important, and people started then losing their livelihood. So therefore, participation became dear, and therefore the Olympic Games decided to discontinue the artistic component of the games. It's a serious travesty of history actually, or the way things happened. However, the world again, like everything happens in our life, we have a good day, we have a bad day, we have an ugly day, good hair day, bad hair day. So the world changes by itself. This is a cyclical thing. And again, around the 90s or in the late 80s, 90s, a lot of changes happened in the world. The USSR was breaking up. There were conflicts in Europe, there were conflicts in Eastern Asia, there were conflicts in India and Pakistan. All of those things were happening. And around that point in time, they decided that isn't it time for us to bring back what can bring the harmony at the first place. And therefore, the International Delphic Council was created and formed by 20 member countries. with Mr. Christian, Kirsch as the founding, Secretary General, and he was the founder, initiator. He spent a lot of time, just the way Jahnavi did now, of gathering people together, getting those 20 countries together, and then it's grown over a period of time. We do Delphic Games, which is as good as the Olympic Games in terms of the grandness and the size and everything else. The difference is you take sports out of it and you put arts in it. And arts is not a competing, you can't compete in arts. In the sense you can compete in certain categories of arts. Not the art, all the arts can be competed. You cannot say he's best or he's the best. Everybody is beautiful. You need to appreciate differences. Why arts? Arts because arts teaches you values. What values? It teaches you values of tolerance. You learn to tolerate. You learn to co-create. You learn to coexist. You learn to co-learn also. You are able to work with each other, and this is something that art teaches you. But whereas many other forms of education or many other forms of practices, they teach you to think for yourself. They teach you to be on your. So, for example, sports. In the olden times, sports were more of a a repository of people who were getting trained to have the stamina to fight wars. Therefore, there was a difference between arts and sports, and we believe that arts is the way to go, and therefore the International Delphic Council has taken initiatives all over the world, and we currently exist in 64 countries actively, and we do have, whenever we have games, a lot more countries cooperate with us and they participate as well. We've had some beautiful games around the world. I cannot show it to you right now, but maybe I have, if I could, I will possibly share some information for all of us for the future. Yeah, we have a PPT if you can run it, if somebody can run it. I'll just run you through some pictures for you to understand the grandness of what we are talking about. So what does the Delphic Games stand for and what does the movement stand for? See, after a lot of research, one realized there are 6 major art categories in the world that you can whittle it down to, So what do you do with those 6 major art categories? You have musical arts and sounds. It encompasses all the genres of music, all kinds of sounds. Then you have visual arts and crafts. It's so very important. I mean, these are all very large, categories. You have performing arts and acrobatics. A lot of people don't realize that acrobatics, martial arts, for example, martial arts specifically, these are all very artistic in the way they have been made. There is science, there is art to it. And therefore we have, performing arts and, acrobatics. We have social arts and we have communication. Now, social arts is something no platform in the world will offer you. This is out of research. Social arts is something like, for example, let's talk about our societies. What's the difference between the last 60, 70, 80 years and now? Depleting values. A lot of things that we used to do, naturally, now we do it because of the globalized way, we are all standardized. So therefore, a lot of these social values, social customs, rituals, even interpersonal engagements between people, between communities, and all these things are dissipating, and therefore social arts is very important to us. And therefore social arts and communications. In modern day times, you have animation, gaming, you've got all the works. It works that way. And then what else do we have? We have got ecological arts and architecture. Everything from town and city planning to heritage conservation to all of that. It comes within that form. And then think about it, and there's literature, language arts and, rhetoric. Language arts is literature, pedagogy, poetry, debating and all of that. And rhetoric is something you're missing today. If you open any television channel, everybody, whatever they speak is the right thing to speak. Nobody has any patience to hear the other person. Rhetoric is so very important. You can play the other one, which is, if it's possible, the other PDF. But you have something called Delphic essay with you. It's in a PDF format, please. If you can, otherwise I can explain it. Try it out. All right. So that's perfectly fine. We'll keep it at this. Let's keep the screen right now, I'll tell you. So therefore, then you have the ecological. So if you look at the transdisciplinary nature of the arts, you will realize that each of these art forms cannot live without the other. And most of the artists, conservators would know this, that every art form has got a dependence on something or the other, and everything boils down to which culture you come from. And in today's times, people mistake culture and they mix up culture and religion. Culture is way above religion. Religion is a byproduct of, various beliefs. Culture is who you are, where you come from, what you speak, what you eat, how you kind of, what kind of, this is so unique to Assam. And therefore, when I go out somewhere, people will know that this is Assamese. Why? Because this is symbolic to Assam. And therefore, culture is about who you are, where you come from, and what kind of clothes you wear, what kind of rituals you do, what kind of customs you have. And these are the things. And that is again dependent on your ecology, depending on where you live. You live by the Brahmaputra, so your culture is riverside culture. You've got a different kind of a culture. People live by the sea, they have a different culture. So people have created their own milieus, surrounding their natural ecosystems. And how does architecture work or heritage work? Construction work. It also works in the same formula. So effectively, everybody has their own unique identities. The expression of those identities or the manifestation of those comes in the form of arts. So a Bolshoi ballet in Russia is dance. And what we do here, Bihu, for example, is dance. But at the end of the day, what is the difference between these two? The difference is in the way that your culture represents this, their culture represents that. Both the cases, you will stand up and dance, you will feel like dancing, you will feel very happy. It represents something or the other which you feel happy about. And therefore, it is the human emotions that are more important to this, the human connect and the human artistic expressions. That is what the Delphic Games, the Delphic Movement, the International Delphic Council stands for. And I must tell you that you possibly are I would say with authority that you are the first such council that we've created, which works in the lines of the coalition Amphictyony that they started 2,500 years ago. And I think a big round of applause should go for all of you, because I know for a fact that every single person who I spoke to, whoever me and Janviji spoke to, I was surprised actually. Usually people will say, my identity, my state, I should be first, I should do this. That's what happens everywhere in the world. But here, everybody said, don't you think we should have a common ground? Don't you think we should have a common council? Let us have our identities, but don't you think this should happen? And I think this is something which really set me thinking. And I thought to myself that, this is what we want. This is exactly what we are looking for. So I would certainly love to tell you that me in whatever, capacity that I have been bestowed with, certainly oversees a certain component of the International Delphic Council's work, and I can assure you that I am certainly going to make this a great example of how other people can be, and I certainly will do it. And I think everybody needs to think on those lines. And if people start thinking on these lines, then conflicts are reduced to a great extent. And I am saying you should have your identity. This is very important because your identity is unique to you. But then within that identity, can there be coexistence? That's what we stand for. So that is the, so to go back into what we've done in the last 27 years, we've done Delphic Games. And we've done it in various countries. We started with Moscow, we went to Georgia, then we've been to Germany, then we've been to Philippines. We've also been to Malaysia, we've been to Korea, South Korea, Jeju Island in South Korea, we've been to South Africa. We have been to all these places, and each of these places, the unique part is that the countries have themselves hosted it. In fact, I'll tell you a very interesting example of what our founder keeps telling me, and it's a very beautiful thing. There was famine, or drought there was a devastating situation in Georgia in the mid-90s. And Georgia had a decision to make, because we approached them, somebody told them about Delphic and this whole idea of bringing people together. And we were very early at that point in time. And the choice they had was either they proportion money to take care of people's welfare, or they proportion money to make people happy so that they themselves take care of themselves. So what did Georgia do? They chose to put in money in the Delphic Games. And they organized the Delphic Games. And though that Delphic Games, what they organized, made such a huge difference to people, to boost their morale and to bring them, to a situation where they all felt very happy. This is what arts can do, and this is one of the more beautiful examples that we have in our world. So one of the things I would love to challenge you, I'd love to challenge the Northeast Council, is to bid for the National Delphiads in the upcoming future, where you have all the 36 states of India coming together in one place and possibly displaying cultures. We call it the dialogue of the arts and the encounter of cultures. Can that happen? That's one of the things that, I challenge you with. I challenge you with the thought that, can children be inculcated the values of arts, which many people do. There are many organizations doing this. But the difference is everybody works in silos and we work as a common floor. And I think this is something that we need to do for children. Schools, youth, for colleges, amateur artists who are budding and who are looking for advice, who are looking around for advice, and looking around for opportunities, and professionals who already are there. And then there is a category above that, which are the gurus, who can possibly do a lot more than that. I'm saying that, we need to take up these challenges. We need to figure out how can we structure things in the Northeast and do it in such a beautiful way that we be an example for the rest of the world. And you have the International Delphic Council support in any manner. You have my personal indulgence in any manner, because I personally seem to have taken to all of you here. I've spoken to all of you here. And I think all of you seem to be extremely, I would say, somebody I was speaking to just now, I think Priyanka, and we were talking about people being layered. I think you're not layered, and that's a beautiful part of this region in the country. And I think this is something which I will cherish. And I think the very fact that you've chosen this venue, you've chosen a very exotic location to say, is you understand what you're doing. I mean, there's a lot of difference in, just doing an event and celebrating an occasion or a moment. And I think you're celebrating it. And that's something which I'm very happy about, and I'm going to carry back good memories. So I would now like to just tell you, since we are here, I'll just finish this in one go, is the Delphic movement has been in India since 2002 in reality. But since 2002, we have not been calling ourselves a movement. We've been calling ourselves the Delphic Council, where we've been taking artists from India to perform in the various Delphic games, to participate there. And therefore, over a period of time, we've kind of come to a situation where many artists have come, many artists have won, but we are not able to put that all together in one coherent manner, because we are a very large country with very disparate kind of cultures and disparate states. I mean, south of India is extremely different from what you are now here on this side. So therefore, we decided to cohere it by creating a national council, and we had a national council, but creating a movement. A movement means everybody gets together and does things together and that kind of thing. So it's a people-powered, it's a people-pushed movement, it's a crowd-powered, as you would call it in today's language. And we are now going to be getting into digital mediums soon, because we've been out of the digital mediums. We are also doing something we've not done before. We are getting into livelihoods for artists. And we hope, in a smaller way, that we start. And as we go along, we use both the platforms. We use the physical platforms and we use the digital platforms to be able to do that. So you can just run it through. I'll just take you through a very brief idea. So this is 25 of 36 states we have in India. We've got over 2,000 active members in this country. We are initiating national projects across 6 art categories. We are popularizing the word Delphic. Many of you must have not heard it before. Many of you would have heard it first time from possibly Jahanavi ji or somebody else. Why? Is because, we've never been pushy about things. We've just expected things to grow organically. It doesn't work that way in today's time, when packaging, positioning, everything is so important. And we talk about planning the Indian Delphiads. Now, Indian Delphiads is a smaller version of the Delphic Games, where the entire country comes together and does the games. And in 23, as we're planning, and we will bid for the Delphic Games for the maybe 2025. India will make a bold attempt to do that. And we'll bring alive all the plans that IDC has wished over the years and all the people who have contributed to us. Please go ahead. These are the Indian member states. I don't have to run you through it. You know the Indian states by heart. Please go ahead. And these are some of the activities we've been doing. These are various Indian states who've been working. This is the movement in Rajasthan. That's the movement out of Maharashtra, and a lot of activities are happening. Go ahead, please. These are the various activities that happen every week. In fact, all of you should do that. You should link your social media handles to the national handles, and you have these Delphic dialogues happening in Rajasthan. They initiated this. And every week on Saturday evening at 5 o'clock, you have these wonderful conversations that you have with people, you know, Padma Shris and people who have possibly done a lot of work in this field, even artists of all kinds. They've been doing on various topics. And then there is Maharashtra, which does Delphic Dialogues too, and they do wonderful work. Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh does Delphic Diaries. They also have lovely conversations. They've been doing amazing work. Please go ahead. So this is how our structure works, you know. Because we have members of the council also here in the audience. We have the National Delphic Council guides in a certain way. It's the way your country works. You know, you have the central government doing certain things, state government doing certain things. So we've divided our roles amongst each other. Please go ahead. So we've completed 27 years, and a big round of applause for us. All of us here. 27 years is not a mean feat at all, because in the modern times, especially when you've transited from the old school to the new school and digital era has come in between, it's a very fragmented kind of a situation, and you've run that long. Please go ahead. This is something that we've shared with Janabiji. I hope it will be in all your groups and all of that. This is the list of programs that we have, these different states. Yesterday we had a wonderful activity in Rajasthan. It was very beautifully done at the Amer Fort. Today you have it here, so very exotic. And then we have, and you are actually 8 states coming together. And then you have Punjab, Chandigarh, we've got Jharkhand, we've got Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu. You get to see various cultures and various arts. Please go ahead. So in this outreach, one of the things that we as a council here can do these things. For us, it's revitalizing the movement also, because we've been here for a longer time. So, you need to keep refreshing yourself. And we have to rejuvenate members and networks with new initiatives. We need to create new content to populate the World Wide Web. Because today, everybody, if I go to a meeting under the table, they're looking into the Google for information. So can we make the Google more worthwhile for ourselves? That's something we'll do. And then we talk about creative media narratives. We bring together all the components of the movement as a homogeneous whole. And we bring alive the wish list that we've all had for a long time. Please go ahead. Please go ahead. That's all. Thank you very much. This is all I have to say. If there's anything else, Janaviji is here, and we are very much going to be active, and we are going to certainly do a lot of work in your region. Thank you very, very much, all of you, for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Prasanna. That was most enlightening. You've given us such a detailed background of the Delphic Games, Delphic movement, and you've got all of us thinking about how we can bid for the next games here in Assam. And now, as an introduction to Assam, which is hosting this 27th International Delphic Games, I now call upon Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Borkakoti, who will speak on Assam's Vaishnavite saint and the Khotra institution. Dr. Borkakoti is the winner of Vaishnavite Literature Award in 2008. He is the founder president of the Society for Srimanta Hongkodian and has been promoting the cultural heritage of Assam as a member of the International Committee on Intangible Cultural Heritage.
Dear friends, here I am to speak about a person who can be a role model for the Delphic movement. He is Srimanta Sangradeva. For Delphic movement, the motto is peace and harmony. And this man who lived in this land 5 centuries ago brought unity among all the ethnic groups who had been at loggerheads. He took components of the cultural elements of all the ethnic groups and created the composite Assamese culture. So what is known as Assamese culture and even literature is creation of this great person. And before some time, Ramesh was speaking about connectivity. So Shankardev was the best person who created connection among all the people. And one institution he created was the Satra, which was also known as Than in his time. Later it came to be known as, I'll speak next. So please go back. This institution Than and Satra, there are about 850 Satras now. At one time there were about 1280 Satras. So all the cultural lives in Assam are spearheaded by this institution, which has preserved our cultural elements. Next. The first Than was set up at Bordwa near Nagaon. This Bordwa Than is about 9 kilometers from Nagaon town. It has a Kirtan Ghar and it is surrounded by the quarters of the devotees. Next. The peculiarity of the Than or Satra is that all the possible activities take place there except the military activity. This is one institution which can be called something pioneering attempt in social enterprise like kibbutz or commune. It covers art, culture, literature, religious activities, and even legal disputes were solved within this premises, which continues even till today. People in Assam generally did not go to the court in earlier days. Every problem was solved within the Satra. Next. This is the entrance of a Satra. It is called Korapat, the gateway. Next. This is the Kirtan Ghar of Bordwa, where Srimanta Shankardeva was born, and he lived there for 67 years before moving to other place. Because of royal persecution, he had to keep on moving throughout his life. But in spite of that, he worked for people, and he came down from the status of a king. Actually, his family happened to be the ruler of the entire middle Assam, but he gave up all those to work for the people. Next. This is the pattern of a Namghar or Kirtan Ghar. In earlier days, it used to be made of thatch and bamboo. This architecture was chosen by him because then people did not have to be dependent on the royalty. Generally, in any temple or other structure, if people have to build it, they have to take royal support in order to erect something made of stone. But here he made things with eco-friendly objects. Next. This is the altar. Srimanta Shankardeva created something new. He was the first person in the world as a philosopher who combined the part of knowledge and part of devotion. He brought together the concept of Brahma and the concept of God, which had been a parallel concept before him. And after him, this was talked about by Spinoza. While Spinoza is known all over the world, people do not know much about Srimanta Shankardeva. But Shankardeva was the pioneer of Spinoza. Next. This is the inside of a Kirtan Ghar. You can see the egalitarian atmosphere. people sit together at the same level. There is no barrier, there is no division between male female. People of any caste, creed, sex could enter and can enter, still enter inside any kirtan ghar. It is open for everyone. Next. This is called hati. There are 4 hatis surrounding the kirtan ghar. The devotees live in these hatis, and the peculiarity of the Satra institution is that the devotees living in these satras have to eke out their own living by doing agricultural work. They do not depend on others. They do not go for begging. So this is one peculiar thing out of all the religions, all the organized religions. It is the only one where the devotees living within the monasteries have to earn their own living. In every satra, you will find the devotees doing their farm work. Next. Srimanta Sankaradeva was not only a religious proselytizer, he was a great artist, great painter, great choreographer, great musician. He created 25 ragas. He created the Satriya dance. So all this concept of Delphic is embedded in this great genius. Next. This is the type of manuscripts which are created and preserved in the satras. The satras are centers of education also. Beautiful painting, manuscript painting are there. Next. This is another manuscript, illustrated manuscript. And we are now trying to revive this art form. Next. I talked about the agricultural activity. You can see a photograph how agricultural activities take place within the premises. Next. Ankiya play. Srimanta Sankaradeva was the first person in India who composed a play in any modern Indian languages. Before him, only Sanskrit plays were written. So he is a pioneer in entire India in the drama movement. And not only a creator of the play, even the language of the play is very important, because it has been now proved by the linguist that the modern Hindi language has emanated from the language of the Ankiya plays. Scholars like Dr. Kapila Bachchan has written in her book. Next. This is a scene from an Ankiya play. You can see the colorful costumes. He created these costumes from the components of different ethnic groups of Assam. Next. It is another scene, and one peculiarity and very important point to be noted here is that this Ankiya play or the hymns or any prayer songs created by Sankaradeva are noteworthy for their ethical elements. If we leave aside the name of God like Ram, Hari, Krishna, Narayan. It is all ethics. So he taught people to be cultured. He taught people to be civilized. And not only that, he was a global citizen. He called upon entire humanity. He did not call upon the Assamese people. He said, O Ba Naraloka, O humanity. He addressed like that. Next. This is the Gayan band. This instrument is called, this drum is called khol. So this was his own innovation. And this is a prelude to the performance of Ankia play. When the Gayan band is performed, it creates an atmosphere for the main play to touch the people, just like the initial music played here of the Delphic, which creates an ambience. The Gayan band also creates an ambience. Next. This is the compare of the Ankia play, Sutradhar. This Sutradhar is different from the Sutradhar of the Sanskrit play. The Sutradhar of the Sanskrit plays used to go out of the arena of the acting, but Sutradhar of Sankardeva's play remains in the arena from beginning to end, and if necessary, he even takes part in the acting. This is a scene from an Ankia play enacted by some Spanish actors at Guwahati. Next. This is another scene from Ankia play. Next. This is Satya dance which I was talking about. The first play enacted by Srimanta Shankardeva, composed by him, was enacted in 1468 at Bordwa. It was called China Yatra, and with that China Yatra, the Satya dance and the Sankari music came into being. It was full of dance and music. So with the Ankia play, the Satya dance also came into being. This is one performance. Next. These are some of the world records of Srimanta Shankardeva. He was the first person in the world who created and used drop scene. He was the first person in the world who used the medium of play for proselytizing, to convey something. In that respect, he was pioneer for even Bertolt Brecht, who used his play for his leftist ideology. He was the first person to use the elevated stage. After him only, elevated stage came into being in London. He was also the first person to use a proscenium. And the secondary role of the characters to send a different message, like a matter link. A matter link can be after him. So he was a pioneer for all those people, but people outside Assam hardly knows all these things. Next. The Satra is not only for religious activity or dance or music. It is also about craft. Different crafts are taught in the Satras and which are carried even till now. These are the costumes, ornaments used in the Ankia play, which are made in the Satras, and now we are trying to revive it, our organization. Next. These are the masks used in the Ankia play, which are also made inside the Satra. Next. This is one important piece of textile art called Vrindavani Vastra. Srimanta Shankardeva depicted the life of Lord Krishna in this textile art. it was sponsored and commissioned by the Coast King Naranarayan. It was created in 1554 at Tatikusi or Bordwa. Tatikusi is the place where the Bordwa Kirtan Ghar is now there. And it was designed completely by Srimata Sankardeva himself. Next. This piece is now preserved in a museum in Paris. Its replica, its imitations are there in Royal Albert Museum and other places. Next. So this is all about, not all about, something about Srimata Sankardeva. I hope we'll get more occasions in future to talk about him. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Borkakuti. That was such an enlightening talk. May I now call upon Dr. Malika Kondali. Dr. Malika Kondali is the first woman doctoral researcher in the Kshatriya dance form, a choreographer and a composer, and author of 3 books on the Kshatriya dance form. Dr. Malika Kondali will perform for us 2 items based on Sri Shankardev's lyrics.
Namaskar. Rasikas, I am going to present before you Kshatriya dance, the classical dance form of Assam, and one of the major classical dance forms of India. I'll perform 2 items. First item is based on Srimanta Shankardeva's one beautiful Borgits, means raga-based devotional song, where the Bhakti saint describes about the agony of the gopis. Lord Krishna is in Mathura, and gopis are eagerly waiting for Lord Krishna. But instead of Lord Krishna, Uddhava comes. Uddhava, the best friend of Lord Krishna, as a messenger. Gopis are totally depressed, and they explain before Uddhava about their agony. Without Lord Krishna, it is like a desert. Even the sound of the cuckoos, so painful for us, friend Uddhava. But ultimately, Gopi realized that only the lotus feet of the Lord Krishna will give them the salvation or moksha. That is Kikahava Uddhava. And my second item is Bharat Bandhana. It is based on Srimanta Shankardev and his main disciple Sri Sri Madhav Deva's beautiful verses, where they describe about the greatness of India, Bharat Barha. Music direction by noted musician and dancer Naren Chandra Borua and Bhupen Nath, and dance choreography by myself. Going to present before you Ki Kahaba Uddhava.
Hari Rama Rama Sana
that was Kikahava Uddhava, based on Srimanta Shankardeva. Deva was one of the beautiful Borgits. Now I'm going to present before you Bharat Bandhana. The accompanying artist of these two items in Khol, Naren Chandra Borua and Girian Kolita, vocal, Bhupen Nath, flute, Prasanna Borua, and violin, Dipen Horma, presenting before you Bharat Bandhana.
Tuanamo
That was Bharat Bandhana, based on Srimanta Hankodev and Sri Srimadhav Deva's beautiful verses, where they describe the greatness of India. My heartiest thanks go to International Delphic Council and Delphic Council of Northeast for their wonderful event and inviting me to perform in this prestigious platform. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.